Good evening, everybody, and welcome back. We've got a terrific episode tonight of Watch the Skies. Tonight, we're going to talk about the ancient astronauts. Unfortunately, Rodney Fike has been kidnapped by aliens, so he won't be joining us tonight. But I got some terrific replacement guests. Got some great questions, too. Before we dive in, let's just quick go around the room and tell the viewers who we are. C. Michael Lanning, let's start with you. Who are you, and what are you known for?
Hey, I'm C. Michael Lanning, independent artist, also host on Art Style Kamikaze on Indie Comics Network. And I do various projects here and there with people, that are, just a little bit here and there.
Cool. Welcome back, buddy. You're getting to be a regular, see?
Yeah, I see that.
And, of course, I got my pal, JD Calderon. I know who you are. JD, tell the viewers who you are.
Well, I just got to say that. See, it's awesome seeing you from the 50s.
This is my mysterious look.
It suits the broadcast. I like it.
Gotcha. I'm JD Calderon, the writer, creator of the Oswald Chronicles, Tall Tales, Magi's Grace, Dreamweavers, and many other things. Soon, all of it to be on Kickstarter. Although Tall Tales is still is on Kickstarter currently. Magi's Grace coming very soon.
Perfect. You make some good stuff, JD. Thanks for coming on the show.
It's not just me. The guy next to me too.
He's doing that too. Oh, nice.
He's almost done with that fourth one too. So,
yeah. I'm always happy to see my pal Todd Tochioka. Todd, welcome back. Tell us who you are.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Good to see some new faces here. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm the letter and colorist for all the in-house products for Shadowline, Jim Valentino's branch of Image Comics. Also, just got named editor for Mally Simpson's Elite Warriors. So nice. Number 1 and number 2, I'll be editing for him and lettering that as well. And Sabaton's Camouflage number 7 should be out soon. That's actually free. If you go to sabaton.org, they're a metal band from Sweden. I do the lettering for their comic chapters in there, and it's free. It's a World Service magazine for their fans. So if you go to sabaton.net or .org, just tell them you'd like a new issue of Camouflage, and they'll send it to you for free of charge. No,
that's terrific. Todd, thanks for sending that book. I think it's very high quality. I love it. I love mine.
Cool. I'm glad that I could do that for you guys, man.
Hey, and it wouldn't be a podcast without Tom Hutchison. Tom, welcome to the show, man. I'm so glad to have you. Real quick, tell the viewers who you are.
Yeah, I appreciate the last second invite. Tom Hutchison, writer, publisher, art director, etc. All things Big Dog Inc. The one genre that I haven't really touched on yet in my writing is science fiction, UFOs, etc. However, I am writing a book for Dren Publications on just that next year, so that'll be fun.
Perfect. I will look forward to that. So like I say, I got some great questions tonight. So if you've been following the promotional material, you've seen that we're going to be trying to prove whether or not ancient astronauts are real. And what we're going to do, we're going to look at a couple of visual examples, and I want to hear some artist perspectives on what exactly these things mean. I'm going to start with the tomb of King Pakal. In 1952, this site was excavated by a Mexican archaeologist, and he found this, it's called the sarcophagus lid. And many people said, well, this thing kind of looks like it looks like an astronaut, right? Blasting off into space. And now some people will say things like, well, this is really just a depiction of him ascending or descending, depending which way you're facing, to the underworld. But I'd like to point out, if you look at the carving, there's definitely what looks like a set of controls, and there's some things that look noticeably astronaut-like. C. Michael Lanning, what do you make of the sarcophagus lid?
I've looked at this image. I can see the guy. That's about it. I've looked at this image. I know it's it's considered like the tree of life or something like that, to an extent, but I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of shapes and everything in there to say that we could just kind of, look at and place how we see fit, within our own world. I don't know. That's a lot going on for me to be able to, I think there might be a parrot above him. I'm not sure.
Well, and keep in mind, this thing it's 615 AD. This thing was supposedly made. So that's going back there quite some years. JD, do you see this when he's sitting in his chair? He has what looks like some kind of breathing apparatus going up his nose. What is that supposed to be?
Well, I mean, but we don't know. right? We don't know how high this guy who made this was, right?
That's what's coming out of his nose right now. That's
Like,
going.
Right.
even coming in. I mean,
So your suggestion, this is an elaborate water pipe that he's seated in front of.
Wow.
you never know. I mean, I don't think we're the first generation of people to discover marijuana or anything else, right? I mean, like I said, it's interesting. It's a beautiful piece of work, but as far as the meaning of it, I mean, without really sitting down and taking, because it's difficult just seeing what these pieces are, because it's very intricate, right? And yeah, and it looks like you got a parrot and a parrot, and then what are these other things, in there, and it,
Yeah, and this isn't necessarily the best image. If you look at the bottom, there's also what looks a little bit like flames. So Todd, let's move this over to you. We spoke last time, and I think it might even have been C that mentioned this also. We tend to look back on these, I'm sorry to say this phrase, but like a primitive culture, and we would think that they were in some way less intelligent than we are today. But that's not always the case. What do you make of this design on the sarcophagus lid?
Sure. Like C and JD have already said, we really don't know. C said there's a parrot there, and Jay, yeah, it looks like a parrot to me, But geez, could this be past man's procedure for rhinoplasty or something? Who knows? I think we saw a comment from creator Zen from Aspen there about a underwater submersible. I'll go with that too. That could be, we really don't know. I kind of like the idea of some serious water pipe though. Boy, that's inspiring to me.
That is inspiring. Tom, how about you? What do you make of this? One of the things you notice, he seems to have his hands on some kind of controls. If they are trying to depict a guy going to the underworld, why choose this design? What do you make of it?
Yeah, well, the first thing that I see immediately is he's sitting on something. It's like he's sitting on a chair, or a throne or whatever. He's got something that he's sitting on and he's looking upwards. That's the way that I bring all this together. All of the controls. I mean, one hand is definitely almost holding something. One hand's almost sort of reaching for something right underneath the parrot. So there's a lot going on here, but that was the first thing that jumped right out to me was he's clearly like sitting on something. This is a built thing for him to sit on and do whatever it is he needs to do with the rest of this stuff. It's also not perfectly symmetrical on either side either. So even though you get sort of similarities on one side, it's a little bit different on the other. So either on purpose or just because that's just the way that it or it needed to be that way. I don't know. But yeah, like it's and then I see like the little, almost the flames or the gas or whatever sort of down at the bottom right. So I don't know. It definitely to me gives the sense of he's sitting on something with the purpose of, at least at this angle. And I don't know if it would be upside down. He'd be falling out of his chair. So
Right.
it really
Let's
looks
ask that
like
question.
he's sitting something and pushing up.
Tom, do you think that this is, because I remind you, this was on something that was, it was like the guy was looking down at the lid of the coffin, and this is the lid we're seeing. So to your eye, is this a guy pointed toward the sky? Or if you're looking at the other way, is he heading down? Which do you think it is?
Well, I think that if you flipped it, he would be pointing down, except the fact that he's sitting in a chair would tell me that that's an upward motion.
That's what I thought too. Yeah, good answer. Good answer. So, I don't know what to make of it necessarily, but I will say it'd be easy to say something like, well, this is a one-off. This is pretty much the only time something like that has been depicted in Mayan culture, but it's not. And they have numerous carvings like this. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this tonight because one of my favorite subjects, right, is petroglyphs. So let's move on to this next one. This is the Val Camonica. Excuse me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Any Italians in the room? Val Camonica petroglyph. This is from 8000 BC, so that's going back there some years. And the reason why this one travels around UFO circles, it seems to depict helmeted figures, and they have sort of what might be rays or antenna coming out. Speaking as an artist, see what is in this image.
The first thing that comes to mind is the Catholic halo that you kind of see around somebody, like the radiating holiness or whatever the case is.
Well, they got to
And-
wait about 8,000 years for Jesus to show up.
Right. But well, I mean, but but even still, like it's highlighting somebody. I think that could be a natural thing that occurs in art. It's because you're trying to draw focus to something. What's interesting is in their hands, it looks like tools, doesn't it?
Correct.
Like
one of the theories is that they are transferring some type of technology to each other. Do you think that's possible?
I mean, I guess it's possible. I always like to think that if this alien technology that can come here to Earth, it would look a lot better than what we saw, what we normally see. So that's
right. Yeah.
If they're passing on their knowledge, they didn't do it well. Maybe they're not good enough teachers. I'm not sure.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things, right, is I like to sort of zoom in on if they are trying to convey something. In this case, this is what they call a petroglyph. It is carved into rock. So if somebody's trying to convey a symbolic idea, what are they trying to convey? JD, what is the artist, if it is symbolic, what is he trying to tell us with this piece?
I mean, yeah, it's interesting to look at it and try to like guess at this person's intentions with this piece, right? I mean, many arguments can be made that maybe he is trying to transfer something to another person. I mean, personally speaking, I just think a lot of people take a lot of drugs. It's like
it's actually a 5-year-old that did this, and it's
we don't know
this was like the refrigerator of the
like right.
It's like there's no context to this. It's just like why can't we just appreciate the art for what it is? Right.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll jump in because I'm gonna take the con on this one because I think there is a little bit of context in some of these. How do I want to say this? In many of the petroglyphs, I remind you that this is something that took a little bit of time to make because they're actually carving it, right? And the other petroglyphs are all things that can be seen visually. What I mean by that, they tend to be things like cattle is one of them. There's one or two that are birds, and there's several that are a man throwing a spear. Right. So I guess, Todd, let's move this over to you. If all the other images are things that can be seen visually, why choose this one if it is symbolism? What does it say to you?
I think, who knows, maybe it was about, it could have been something like sensationalism, hey, come and check out our art. It is the biggest in the land. No, come check our art. We did this cow. It's so huge. No, we don't know. It could be. I had read things where they talked about this art represented where certain resources were underwater and things like that too. So again, we don't know what the context is when these things were created. But like you were saying, Tim, boy, these things weren't done in just like a week's time. These things. Right. Took some planning. These things took some resources and some people, man, some real elbow grease here. So there had to have been some intention. What was the intention and what was the message? It's really hard to tell without knowing the context.
It's hard, right? So, Tom, what do you make of this? We've seen some of the cattle. We've seen the men throwing spears. If this is symbolism on the point of the artist, what is he trying to tell us?
Well, there's a couple of things kind of going back to what we talked about with petroglyphs being these rock carvings and then just general wall cave drawings and paintings and stuff. It is generally stuff that we understand that, hey, I saw this thing, I'm going to paint it on the wall, or in this case, I'm going to chisel it in the wall. So one of the questions would be like, when does art officially begin, right? Like where people are actually making things up to hey, this isn't real, but I'm still going to tell you about it, right? So back in these times, though, I don't know how much is being sort of fabricated for the purpose of storytelling. So in my brain, I kind of look at this as like, yeah, you know what? They saw something. I'm not saying it's aliens. I'm not saying it's whatever, but they saw something. They saw something that had, to me, like C was saying, it's a halo energy to me because it appears to be shining. Yeah. And then even if they're helmets, the other thing, and this could just be random, but both of those heads are completely different within the halo, within the helmet, whatever it is. So there's two completely different heads, and that could actually indicate, hey, this is these people here, this is these people here. They look different, but they only have the ability to do limited, differentials. So that, that's something to look at too.
Okay, good.
Can I say something? Sitting here staring at it. This is a man and a woman.
Yeah.
Look at the shape of the body, and I'm going to tell you what I think. If you look at that, we're looking at it like it's a helmet, but look at the dark spots. I bet you that's hair. Because if you look at the male, it almost looks like a beard. Like if he's facing you this way,
yeah,
around that dark spot, it looks like a beard, and this looks like a bob cut for the woman.
Sure.
So the only question then would be, what are the spikes?
I think it's still a like knowledge, like kind of maybe it's their form of enlightenment, like a light bulb going off.
Let's take one more circle, because I want to remind you, 8,000 BC. These are Stone Age tools. This is before steel. This is before bronze. To me, these tools look a little bit like antenna, maybe, that they're handing each other. Let's start with you. See, what are these items in their hands?
Well, see, for her, I could see like a kind of like a T-square or a speed square in a way. What they would use that could be primitively used to level surfaces, and on her other hand looks like a ruler, right? That long piece right there. So I'm going to say I think this is an instruction manual. It's like it's something about
this is early IKEA.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Sure.
It's almost like that's why you would have that enlightenment, almost like there is a passing of knowledge here. Right. But that's how I'm looking at it. I'm trying to figure out if this is just underneath the guy's arm, if that's like a little pug dog, or if that's just a nick or something.
That might just be a little bit of deterioration.
Yeah, that could be. That's what I'm trying to figure that out. So.
JD, what do you make of these in their hands? Are they tools? What is the artist trying to tell us?
I mean, they could be early bow and arrows, but to think they're tools like a T-square or something like that. I mean, you never know. I mean, it's possible. I mean, look, like you guys saying, the halo around their heads, those could just as easily be, you could look at that and say, well, maybe that's like a helmet and that's light that's coming out of it. And that's the depiction that these people were seeing, right? Sure. And I think that's where maybe, the space astronaut thing might be coming from. But, I always fault on the side of drugs.
Yeah, it's very, very possible. Especially, like I say, it is Italian. You know how they are.
Well, listen.
Wow.
I don't know.
A little bit of a hot take. Todd, what do you think, man? Like I say, to me, I look at those, and particularly the fact of their what I would call straight edges in these tools, which were not too common that long ago. What do you make of it? Are they tools? Is it some representation?
Could be any of those, right? Could be tools, like you said, some kind of technician's tools. Could represent like the passing of knowledge, like was brought up.
Right.
Maybe enlightenment is being passed on to a student or whatever. And it really could just be some huge art, right? We don't know why these were created or under what context these were created. But it's hard to say that it was just done as like some kind of street tag, like mountainside tag. Here it is. But I can really see what you guys are talking about the radiation of light possibly coming from a helmet or possibly coming from the being itself. That's maybe how the artist had interpreted what they saw.
This is an interesting take. Tom, you're going to have the final word on this. What do you make?
Yeah, I've got it figured out. I know
ahead.
exactly what this is. That's Spider-Man and that's Spider-Woman, and that's their spider senses going off. This is obvious. Stan Lee clearly ripped these guys off from 8,000 years ago. And
Spider Pug, yeah.
What do you think of the tools? Are they? Is this a tool? Is it some symbol? What do you make of it?
Well, I think that they are probably tools to some degree, only because you've got multiple shapes going on. She's got the, assuming it's the girl, she's got the spear or whatever's in their hand plus the bendy thing. His is a little different. It's more angular than the others are curved. So there's definitely, that's where I kind of feel like this is maybe almost early quote unquote comic book art, where it is the Enlightenment element, because it looks like people are teaching each other something. And so whoever carved this out sort of had the context of like, how do I show that we've accomplished something? And a lot of times that's just through like light, like literally like the light bulb went off, right? So this kind of falls into that sort of context for me.
Okay, that's actually a pretty good take. I think we've reached a little bit of a consensus, although nobody mentioned perhaps whoa, here it comes. This is what I was getting ready to say. Zen's got it. These are potentially musical instruments. That's primitive musical instruments, but instruments just the same. Good answer, Zen. That's the one that I was.
Well, I was looking in his other hand. It kind of has the figure of a bird, and maybe he's just bringing home dinner. I mean, I'm not sure.
That parrot, yeah.
Yeah.
You guys love these parrots. So I was going to mention that it'd be easy to say, again, well, hey, this is just a one-off kind of a thing. It's actually somewhat rare for these prehistoric cultures, but a little bit of research shows us that it is not rare at all. Yeah. So let's take a quick look at this one. If we look across the history of petroglyphs, what we're going to find is that with no communication whatsoever, thousands of miles apart and on different continents, we see some similarities between these carvings. See, I'm giving it to you first. How can this be?
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's put it this way. If you look at, you trace back DNA, as scientists, whichever scientists we're talking about, depending, we all come from one ancestor, right? So at one point in time, we were all clustered together. So there's a good chance that stories that were passed from ancestors down ancestors, and you just spread out. Let's say, for instance, let's just take it biblically speaking. There was a flood. The world broke apart. If that's the case, then people moved across the world. They started from one area and they expanded out. So you could be looking at things, boats for that matter. I don't think, from what I'm looking at here, it could be like the whole there's the hull of the boat at the top at the end. I don't know boat knowledge, so you're gonna have to. But where you would have the like the woman on the boat or whatever carved into it.
I believe it's the keel.
Is it the keel? Yeah,
well, I think if he's talking about the front, that's the prow. But
the prow was the back.
I think the keel's underneath, right? Because that's what they call keyholing.
Correct.
It's just that
something.
So I'm thinking because there's a lot of similarities, but this comes, like say for instance, take the flood with the 200. There's like 200 and something cultures that have the flood narrative somehow, right? Gilgamesh and so on. So there could be something to that, even with the whole Sons of God thing, the same thing there too. So there could be a story that started out in a small group of ancestors, and as they reproduced and moved on, that it just stuck with them, and now we're seeing the depictions thereof, that kind of thing.
Good answer. JD, what do you make of it? How can such similar constructions be so far apart at such an early time?
Well, I mean, I think it's just the hubris of, I don't want to say it's Judeo-Christian, us being raised in that format, like ancient people got around. Like we know that the Vikings went out further and farther than we knew, right? Than was first let on. We know these cultures mixed in other ways. We just don't know how far they got, right? We don't know if they made it to these shores or not, right? We don't know how far they got. We don't know how far these depictions of art got. How far did these stories carry, right? So, it could just be that one person heard a story and got an image and took it with them and spread that story all around the world as they went around. We don't know.
This guy, he was walking pretty fast, the fellow that got from Mexico to Egypt.
Well, I mean, I would hope he got on a boat at some point.
well, like Steve was saying, the land masses were originally connected, potentially, right? To Bering Strait. So,
right. But I'm pretty sure when these stones were made or these images were made, everything was pretty much apart at that point. And like
Well,
I said,
yeah.
I think the travel by sea was probably a little bit more prevalent than we probably know. I mean, without putting
or
on
the other option is that it's just a coincidence. I mean, Todd, what do you think? Is it because they're similar, but they're not exact, of course. Todd, is it a coincidence, or is there enough similarity that it is not a coincidence? What do you think?
I definitely see a lot of similarity, even just in the way that the art is just kind of designed. But if these were created, like, let's say when we did have a supercontinent and cultures were able to travel and they were able to exchange knowledge and art, I could see where something like this would be kind of commonplace, where everybody has their own take on this particular design. Here we have in Southern California, we have like 50 bazillion taco stands, and they are all individually different from one another, but all kind of the same. They all have the same product that looks pretty much the same. You know what it is, but they're all unique. So perhaps this is just a regional thing,
Yeah. And I do believe Zen's statement here about the one world ancient civilization, and we're kind of headed towards that. Let's hear from Tom, though. Tom, so you're going to finish up this topic too. They are kind of similar, right? But would you say it is a coincidence, or is there so many similarities that there's a possibility of a one world civilization? What's your take, Tom?
Well, I don't know if either. I mean, they're all clearly sitting in something, whatever it happens to be, whether it's a cockpit, whether it's a piece of a boat or whatever. But we also got to remember that this type of stuff isn't limited to just this type of stuff. Just in the generalities of like the pyramids, there are pyramids around the world. And each pyramid is a pyramid, but then is also its own pyramid. It's its own style of pyramid. Some are, like in Egypt, others have more levels to them. So, this could very easily have been just a story about a guy that then drifted across the world, and everybody did their own version of him, just as they did their own pyramids. Who is the guy? Whether he's a god, whether he's a traveler, whether he's Jesus, whether he's Buddha, whatever. It could be that story that is just, hey, in the Aztecs, we're going to depict him this way. New Zealand, we're going to depict him this way, and so on. That could be just the easiest case. Now, what he's sitting in, that's really the true question. Right. How do these guys all have a cockpit of some sort to sit in? But it's all,
and admittedly not really in almost all four cases, not really boating civilizations. I don't know too much about the Maori, but I can tell you the Aztecs and the Olmecs and the Egyptians were not really known for their boating.
Well, and even if they were all boating people, all of these are encapsulated, right? They're all sitting in a thing, and that's not a boat thing. There was no submersibles and like let's go underwater and do this kind of stuff, not in this kind of capacity. So I think we have a story that probably just was the telephone game, throughout the world over a period of time. And, hey, this is what they heard. This is what they heard. This is what they heard. So it all has a similarity. And then in whichever region it sort of, is created in, they created their own portion of that story for themselves.
Their own vision. Yeah, that's not a bad answer. Okay, I buy that. So
can I
go ahead, brother.
Can I give this one more? I'm sorry, but there's also the case of perspective. Perspective wasn't introduced to us in the way that we look at comic books and everything, things going off into a distance. So the question is this: on some things, like maybe from the New Zealand one, it looks like he's sitting in something. But could these other things perhaps be a perspective issue? Sure. But those aren't. Yep. They're not really sitting in anything. That is just a depiction of everything that's around them, and perspective is being applied, like we see.
Absolutely, that's a possibility
we see today
for sure. Yeah, that's a great pickup. Yep.
So I'm going to switch gears here a little bit, which one of the things that I like to ask is, why did they choose these representations? And, hey, I'm all about art and I love visual representations of things. And I know that human beings like to communicate visually. But to me, the question is always why? Like, why did they choose that? So the next example I have is what they call the Nazca lines. This is in Peru. It's from 200 BC. You guys are going to probably recognize this one. These are what they call geoglyphs. What they mean by a geoglyph is this is an earth carving, right? Sort of plowed into the ground. And again, same thing. This took a while to make. And my question is, they say they are best viewed from 500 meters, which is 1,600 feet in the air. So again, we're talking about people that there are no nearby mountains or anything really to look at these things. Why did they make it this way? See, Michael Lanning, you're first. Why did they make the Nazca line?
I think they had themselves a peace pipe and decided, I think, hey guys, let's see what we can do with this. Just like, how big can we make this thing? Which I think they considered that it was using constellations and everything and measurements and everything else like that is how they ended up actually doing it. But yeah, I don't know.
This is a tough one, right? Yeah.
This is kind of like a hummingbird type hybrid.
Right. This is a famous one. They call that one the hummingbird. There's also
do they? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Here's another view of it. There's the hummingbird. There's the astronaut. There's actually a few of these things, and a couple of them defy explanation. JD, I'm going to give it to you next. Why do it this way? Like they couldn't, once they made it, they couldn't even look at it themselves. Why do it?
Well, isn't it obvious? These are landing fields. These are the aliens were coming. They had to land somewhere.
Yeah, I tried to pick the interesting visual examples, but just to mention, there's actually many that look like they might have been landing strips. There's something like, I might have it wrong, viewers jack me up, but it's something like there's over 700 of these geoglyphs. I'm just picking the most interesting ones for the show.
Right. I mean, listen, who knows? But yeah. That's the only thing I can come up with, because it's an interesting art piece, but like you said, it's like, how do you interact with this, right? Like, did they have a dirigible that they could go up in? Did they have a hot air balloon that they could go up and look at it? Right. That we know of, because we don't know. In the end, we don't really know.
Well, that's the $1 million question, right? I think we can all agree that if you make artwork, how do I want to say this? The end result is that you want somebody to look at it.
You want someone to appreciate it.
Yeah. Who is going to be able to look at this? Todd, you're up next, buddy. What are the Nazca lines? Who is intended to look at this, and what do you make of it?
Well, I think what C and JD brought up, I think those are pretty much what I was going to bring up as well. Yeah, did they have like these vehicles that they could go up into the up in the sky and check out this art form? And really, who's commissioning it then, if it is for art, right? Also, I was thinking, could it also just be like an indication of property lines or something? This is our land here, so this whole symbol here is our land, so don't come in here, or whatever, right? But like you were saying, Tim, there's so many of these things, and really the only way to appreciate it as a whole design is to really see it from really high up, right? Right. So, gosh, I wish I had a better answer for y'all, but
this is a hard one. This is a hard one, and that's why I want to bring up the topic with artists, because I think we can agree that it's a visual representation of something. And in this case, you can say, many of these say, well, it's symbolism. Okay, we agree on that. This one is obviously a hummingbird, so it's less symbolic than some. But the question remains, who is intended as the viewer of this art? Tom, you're up next. What do you make of the Nazca lines?
Well, certainly the alien thing comes into play here, but just the idea that throughout human history, we've praised everything to the gods, one way or another. It's all just gods, right? We do this for this, we sacrifice for that, whatever. This could be just something as simple as, hey, God, have a look. We're doing this for you, because we can't look at it. So this is for you. We're making what you gave us pretty for if it's just art, right? We're doing something cool here. Now, a lot of the Nazca lines are weird and bizarre. I mean, you get like spiders and weird shit. I mean, there's weird Nazca lines too. So in some cases, you have to kind of look at it as, okay, what is this and why is it here? But in the case of just like a hummingbird, this to me is just sort of like, looking up at the constellations and so on. Hey, the gods gave us the constellations to look at. Let's give the gods something to look at when they look down at us. So to me, it is primarily artistic in its nature, but not for them, for either the aliens. But to me, again, I think it's just sort of, hey, the gods are watching us. Let's do something to make them happy.
I kind of like that answer. I think that's
I like that constellation thing. That's good. Yeah.
Well, and I think that out of all of them, that's probably the closest that we're going to get to the truth, right? Because the simple answer is, guys, there is no human being that would have been able to view this at the time they were made. That's 200 BC. So that's 2,400 years ago.
That we know of.
Okay, so Zen's telling us a conspiracy theory that involves hot air balloons were in heavy use before the Hindenburg. Well, I will say that, you're talking about a very base technology. That's actually very, very possible, because you could have made a hot air balloon with nothing more than a fire, right? And maybe got a couple of animal skins stitched together. I would say it's possible.
Yep.
Well, there's even been legends that Solomon had something along those lines, that he could actually fly. So who knows, what gets lost in sacking and people, destroying things or whatever. We don't know.
Gotcha. Well, let's switch gears here, right? The next one I want to talk about is Stonehenge. Some people say, hey, well, this was created by the Druids, and there seems to be some controversy about that. It's not clear really who built it. Some people say it was a calendar. That doesn't seem to be too clear either. See, what do you make of Stonehenge?
I tried not to crack a joke about giants on this one, but
go for it, man. Crazy opinions are accepted.
It's actually a Lego set that's just been laying around for thousands of years.
5,000 years ago. That's going back there.
It doesn't. I don't know too much about Stonehenge. I know that the way it's situated in is it like the way it faces the east or something like that? There's some mysticness to it. So I don't know. I mean, again, this could go back to the spiritual thing, like Tom was talking about with the Nazca lines too. This one doesn't strike me as extraterrestrial. It strikes me more of a spiritual thing than anything, like a harmony with the earth.
Yeah,
I guess because it's stone, but
right.
Yeah, it doesn't strike me as extraterrestrial though.
Yeah, you make a good point there. One of the things about Stonehenge, and I only know this because it was in a comic called Hellblazer. If you guys remember John Constantine, Hellblazer. Yeah. I think he might even have had a movie once with Keanu Reeves. But he pointed out that there's a couple places on Earth that are situated on what they call a ley line. That's Ley, and it is a source of like it's a geomagnetic power source is what it is. And perhaps coincidentally, Stonehenge is sitting on one of the intersections of the ley lines. AD, what do you make of Stonehenge? First off, do you believe in ley lines?
My understanding is New York sits on a number of them.
I think that's true, actually.
Yeah, it is. I mean, who knows? Right, like but the thing with Stonehenge, I do believe it's something dealt with worship, and probably had something more to do with the sun than anything else, possibly even the moon. But I know they've done calculations as far as like the way they're positioned and stuff, but it's not my area of expertise. But obviously these people were heavily motivated to do this. Right. Because that's not an easy feat when you have to do that with pull and tackle, and that's a lot of manpower right there.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, for sure. You make a good point, JD. They had to be into it to do this.
Yeah. I wonder what would happen if they dug around it. They won't, but if they excavated that area, if they would find the tools that they used to make that, just pieces of it here and there. It's been, I'm just curious.
Yeah. Well, no, I think they found the quarry but it's like
Did they?
miles away. Yeah. You'd have to do some research, but yeah, I think they found the core, but it's like not anywhere near close. I mean, so this was someone was heavily motivated because I mean, like I said, the manpower it would take to build that is crazy.
Yeah.
Just think about it just today. Getting, a crane, several trucks, how many guys you're gonna have to get on there on site, engineers, so on and so forth. I mean,
Here in my state, it took them a little over 10 years to build a section of highway, and it is flat.
there you go.
Hey, so Todd, let's move this over to you. Is Stonehenge a geomagnetic power source? Is it a calendar, or is it something else? Tell us, Todd.
I think it's all those things. I feel like the art that we've seen, or the pieces that we've seen so far, really elaborate, maybe basic in design, but really elaborate in execution. So this, even though probably labor intensive in execution, some of the design aspect sort of fails me, but there are ways to tell time using a sundial. So there are probably ways to tell all kinds of things with this, whether it was a farmer's almanac, or whether it was a portal to another world, or whether it is something that beings from the sky are seen and see and appreciate as an offering. I don't know. But really, I feel like because there are so many articles written about Stonehenge being connected to things in the heavenly bodies in the sky, to seasonal constellations that happen. I feel that it is more of a farmer's tool, of some kind of almanac, almost like tool for the farmers to use to tell when seasons are coming, when seasons are changing, possibly even to forecast the weather as it's happening.
Sure. Well, I got to say, I agree with that one too. Tom, you're going to get the last word on Stonehenge. No one mentioned the Druids yet, so if you want to work that in, that's fine. And also, Tom, you've been mentioning as a tribute to the gods. Some people think that Stonehenge is in fact a type of religious memorial. What is your 2 cents on Stonehenge?
Well, yeah, I think it's got a lot of things going on. I mean, part of it is seasonal, whether it was for farmers or whatever. I mean, it's set so that I'm going to get it probably one way or the other, but it's set for the winter solstice as on the sunset and the summer solstice on the sunrise, or vice versa. Like it's built for that. So it definitely has astrological elements built into it. And it's also got burial mounds and stuff that are sort of around the whole thing. So I think it's got probably multiple uses. But then with the whole circle around it, I kind of, you kind of start to add like calendar elements to it that go along with the seasonal things. So, you're talking about, when is it good to do crops? When's the winter? When's the summer? All that kind of stuff. So to me, I think it's, I don't know that we'll ever know exactly what it is, but I think it's pretty clear that it had seasonal astrological things, which then again can come back to the whole God thing, the constellations and how all this sets. So, it could still have a outer space, godlike component to it. But I think that it's primarily just calendar based.
I got to agree with you there, Tom. And since you mentioned calendar-based architecture, I'm going to take a hard turn back to the Mayans for a second. We'll talk about the Pyramid of Chichen Itza, right? Which got a couple of weird things about this pyramid, or I guess that's actually a ziggurat. But the fact is, they say if you add up the number of steps, it totals to 365. It's got the thing with the shadows on the equinox, where if you watch it, the shadow goes up the one side and comes down the side that you see there with the snake head, and the shadow goes right down into the well of souls. It's an optical illusion is what it is, but a very advanced one for the Mayan civilization. This is going to tie back into something Todd said last week. How did the Mayans, who didn't even have the wheel, how are they able to make these calculations about astronomy and so forth? See, this one's up to you.
Or
Or was it aliens? If you think it's aliens, just say so.
It was all
But if it's aliens, you have to do the whole thing. Aliens.
Right. I don't know what the question is, but the answer is aliens. That's
Do you believe, let me make it simple. Do you believe that the Mayan civilization was influenced by interstellar travel?
like I said, if it was, I'd like to have seen a little bit more advanced technology than what we're seeing with just stone. Because if they're able to come from outside, if it's extraterrestrial, I would almost have to think it would be on a dimensional level instead of an interplanetary one, if that makes sense.
I buy that.
Here, I mean, this is something I think that you just watching the sun, planning it right, drawing it out in a map as a flat layer and figuring out where the sun's going to go, and considering, you could take a small model and stick it there to give you an idea of how that sun's going to go and where it's going to go. So I think this could be done really with just drawing some lines out, some chalk lines. I mean, not really chalk, but chalk lines or whatever the case is on the ground, and figuring out where your placement's going to go. Just like a sundial. I mean, basically it's the same type of structure, right? You have the point. So it's like, hey, I like this. Let's make it bigger. That kind of thing.
Right. So it could be entirely inspired by just watching the sky. It is very possible. JD, what do you make of it? The Mayan civilization, were they influenced by aliens?
I don't know if they were influenced by aliens or not, but yeah, I do feel that this was something. It was a religious artifact, and I mean, the thing is we know they were sophisticated mathematicians, right? My understanding is that it's from this area of the world that the concept of zero comes from, right? So that when the Europeans landed, they didn't have a concept of zero, of nothing. Right. And so they had an advanced understanding of mathematics. So, again, I mean, this just looks like probably it's just another man's grandiose hubris to himself, right? This is just another monument built to another rich guy. Got a bunch of little poor people build this crap for him.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
And we see that's I work in the middle of Manhattan, and I see these buildings all the time.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Todd, what do you make of it? Mayan civilization.
I really like JD's answer. Just a rich guy paying poor people to do his shit to satisfy his hubris. That's great. I you know what? If that's what it is, that's what it is, right? But I want to hope that there's something a little bit more fulfilling with the design of this structure. 365 steps. The idea that this culture was so into following the sun and to worshiping the sun and writing stories about the sun and talking about things coming down from the sun. So maybe this was just a very advanced and large sundial, or a very advanced and large, again, Farmer's Almanac kind of tool. But we also talked about pyramids in a past episode, and how they could have been power generating sites. They could have been teleportation sites, whatever. Right. The idea that they were able to construct this, though, so many ages ago is impressive. Whether or not it's got alien influence in it or not, these people were advanced for their time, and even for our time, I feel, to construct something like out of stone like that.
Yeah, with primitive tools.
It's such precision. Well, primitive as what we might think that they had access
I apologize about that word, but I guess the only other word is non-modern. So.
They may have had access to, I don't know, heavy lifting cranes and vape pens before we ever even thought of them. So who knows, right?
I mean, they might not have had wheels, but they had logs, right? I mean,
sure.
It is in the middle of the forest.
Yeah. So
And
Just
there's
put it on
also
log
the
scroll.
just to bring it up again, there's the the ley line theory, which says that it's magnetic, that these objects, they could like float them from place to place along the ley lines, which is a possibility. Let's hear from Tom. You're going to get the final word on Chichen Itza. Tom, were the Mayan civilizations influenced by aliens? Yes or no?
Well, I got a question. Do we know what they did at the top? Was that a sacrificial thing?
It's a sacrificial site.
It is a sacrificial thing. Yeah. So anytime you're sacrificing, you're sacrificing to one of two things. You're sacrificing to the quote unquote gods, aliens, whatever you want to call them above, or you're sacrificing to JD's theory, the rich guy who just needs his stuff done. So it's got to be it's a monument to something. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily like Trump Tower here, where we're talking about this rich guy that just gets everybody to do his shit. But when you're putting something at the top like that, I feel like you're trying to reach something above you. I mean, that's kind of the point of the pyramids, is you're trying to get higher and higher and higher. So to me, it's definitely a god/alien thing. Where their mathematical prowess came from, who knows, in order to do all that kind of stuff. But we've seen mathematical cultures over the years all over the place building stuff that we still can't figure out exactly how they do it. So aliens, gods, mutants that just happen to know what's going on and, teach some people, who knows?
Well, and it's a weird thing. And I think one of the reasons, there's a few reasons, but one of the reasons why the mystery is deep is because here's this civilization that was supposedly advanced, and now there's not a trace.
And they disappear.
I mean, same as the Egyptians. Tell me your favorite Egyptian car, your favorite Egyptian ballpoint pen. And again, I'm not ripping on the Egyptians, but the truth is they never did have any other great world monuments,
Well, and in fairness too, it's also about where they were able to find minerals and things of that nature to make certainly. Because if I'm not mistaken, I think they did have kind of like a form of a light bulb, in some respects too, that they found. It wasn't powered by electricity as we know it, but they had something.
Yeah, and the batteries, they found these batteries that are 5,000 or 6,000, and they still have a charge in them.
I was going to say, if you could make a battery out of a potato, I'm sure they had something.
Yeah, it's what they call it's what they call an OOP. Do you know the OOP, the out of place artifact, the UPA? And one of them is, I think it's Mesopotamia. They found this battery, and essentially what it is, it's 2 layers of rock, and there's chemicals in it. And as the rock decays, the chemicals touch each other and generate an electronic charge. And they found one, it's 5,000 years old, and it still works.
Wow.
That's an UPA, an out of place artifact. Hey, I got one more left for you guys to take a look at. I want to ask a couple of questions about Ezekiel and the wheel. This is going to tie into some of the biblical representations that C was telling us about earlier. And my question about this one is sort of similar, right? Let's see if we can, just for a second, we can keep religion out of it. Because you can say, well, this is symbolic, right? And if you guys know the description of these angels and what this guy saw, it is a very disturbing description, right? The angels with all these eyes and multi-headed, and the wheels within wheels that are turning. It's a very mechanical description, and in fact, it is the only one in the Bible like that. Did Ezekiel see a UFO?
No.
Tell us why.
No, because it actually explicitly talks about that this was symbolic. And I know you don't want to say this, but it actually does explicitly talk about this being the symbolic of the glory of God, moving to and fro from earth, things of that nature, seeing all the way around, and that. So I know this biblical account quite well, which is funny to me, because when I hear people say, "Oh, this is what angels look like," no, that's not what it's saying. It was symbolic. Those certain aspects, like the creatures all facing in different areas, different ways, were an example of God's omnipotence, omniscience, and he understood that. This wasn't like I'm trying to piece together an account of something weird that I saw. He understood what he saw. He saw, and it was symbolic, but he understood what he saw. So no, this was, if it's not spiritual and you don't want to take it that nature, it was a hallucination coupled with his poetic mind. If you really want to say that.
Okay, that's a good answer. And by the way, no disparagement. I appreciate answers of faith. See,
Oh,
Michael.
no.
I think
no,
that's a
I
good
get
answer.
you. No, it's
Yeah.
just I see that all the time, and it's like, no, that's not what that depicts. That's not what it says. It actually gives you what that is, and that's
Well,
what always gets you.
I would say it's still controversial because it is.
Oh no, yeah, I get it.
It differs from the other descriptions quite a bit. Let's switch over to a real quick question because maybe this will tie it in. See, Michael Lanning, are you a man of faith?
I am
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay.
Yeah.
Good for you, brother. Me too. And that's one of the reasons why we might interpret this differently. And that's one of the reasons why it shows that science and faith are, in fact, cousins and are not actually opposed.
I'm
JD,
open to being wrong, though.
yeah. I've been wrong so many times. It's likely that I'm wrong again. But I want to hear JD, buddy. So you tell us, did Ezekiel see a UFO?
I go with C's answer. I go with answer C.
I shouldn't have went first.
Okay, so but let me ask you then.
Um,
I want to take the other side because I think it makes a more interesting podcast. So if it was a symbolic representation, why choose moving wheels?
You asking me, or are you?
I'm asking
him?
JD now.
Okay.
Oh, you're asking me. Okay. Why use moving wheels? I mean, it could be the symbolism could just be, life itself just moving around.
The stars, maybe something?
Right. It could be the stars moving around. We know the moon is moving around the earth. Who knows? I mean, or maybe it could just be he saw an alien.
Hey, it could be, man. You never know.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know.
Todd, what do you make of Ezekiel and the wheel? It's an unusual description. I think we can admit that. But is it a symbolism for faith, or does Ezekiel see something strange?
Well, I mean, it could be both, right? I really wish my wife Rebecca were home because she majored in hermeneutics. She could probably help us out a little bit here.
You're going to have to teach us. I don't know the word hermeneutics.
Oh,
she went to Bible University.
Hermeneutics is the study of like you have certain in the Bible, you have poetries, you have historical accounts, things of that nature, understanding things in context as far as hermeneutics and
cool.
putting
Thank
together
you.
a sermon, things like that. So
I didn't know that one. Thank you for clarifying. So Todd, finish your train of thought there.
Sorry. So had he seen something technologically astounding to him, right? That represented whatever it represented. If he saw something, if he hallucinated something or saw some kind of holy vision that presented itself to him and was like, bro, check this out. And he's like, whoa, that's a lot of wheels or something turning around. And whoa, what are you? You've got a lot of faces. Whoa. So something happened to this guy. Now, whether he just went on a binge and went on some bender for a couple days and saw some amazing things, who knows? Like JD has said, I mean, people have been using all kinds of things to medicinally assist with reaching some sort of experience, right? Some spiritual experience. Who knows? Gosh, did he see something technologically crazy? Probably. Was it something that was either holy or actually just some kind of technological anomaly? I don't know. I really don't know.
I appreciate your honesty. Tom, you're going to get the final word on Ezekiel and the wheel. Was this a symbolism of something holy, or did Ezekiel see something weird?
Well, why couldn't he have seen something weird and it been interpreted as something holy?
That's what it is now. Apparently that's what C says.
That's the whole thing. I mean, the thing with the Bible is a lot of it's metaphorical and all that kind of stuff. And like we're talking about, it's a vision of this and a vision of that. I know where C's coming out with the whole thing about it moves to show the omnipresence of God and all that kind of stuff. But just because that interpretation exists doesn't mean that is accurate in any capacity. That's just that belief system believes that element. Whereas it could absolutely have been a UFO of some sort that looked like it had eyes along the edges or, whatever it happened to be. But it was then interpreted in that time and place as, okay, it's God, it's this, it's that, it's so on down the line. So I don't know that there's really any, let's call it evidence that it's anything other than he had a vision, let's call it a vision. But where the vision came from, I think, is the interesting part. Like, was it, drugs? Was it the aliens that came flying by through the mountains and he was like, holy shit, what was that? Or was it just God going like, hey, here's
Right.
what you need to know.
Right.
But can I give a little bit of context to it though?
Yeah, go ahead.
And in essence, and this might feed into your theory, Tom. But mind you, at this point in time, Israel has been taken over by Babylon, and if I'm not mistaken, at this time, Babylon has even fallen, and they're under the Medes and the Persians at this point in time. So they're under extreme oppression. Right. This is about the same time as Daniel and the lion's den and everything else. So they're under an extreme, oppression at this point in time. And so he's actually by the lake of Shabar when he sees this vision. So, hey, if I'll give you this, perhaps, I don't believe it, but perhaps it was sun damage. It was being out in the heat, that kind of thing. That's a possibility too.
Well, weird things in again, primitive cultures, whatever we want to call it.
Right.
Back in the day, lots of times people will see something they can't explain, and their answer is it was a god. Whether it's God, whether it's Zeus, whether it's, Quetzalcoatl, whatever it is, the answer is always, well, the gods are here. They're doing things, and this is what we saw.
Yeah.
But, the reality might be that, like we talked about the shining helmet, right? Maybe it was just shine off of something and it wasn't really glowing and, so on. So there's always kind of the how far can you track back this to kind of realize, oh, you know what that guy saw? That wasn't God. That was a meteor flew through, or, whatever it is. But this stuff's so far back that unfortunately there's no way to really backtrack it anymore. There's no CCTV.
And that's why I wanted to ask you guys, because I think it's valuable to have these different perspectives, and especially artist perspectives. I think Tom's onto something with the meteor, because I want to just add the final word on this, because, you mentioned Daniel and the lion's den, and there's a lot of symbolism in these biblical works, and you have to remember who the intended audience was for these tales. And I guess I would say it like this. If you were trying to convey, let's say, we'll use C's words, he said omniscience. Why would you choose wheels rotating in the sky? It's certainly an unusual choice. It isn't one that would be readily understood by the audience, at the very least. And the second thing, the description of the angels is terrifying. It isn't comforting at all. So if you're trying to explain the holiness or the omniscience, this is a very curious vehicle to use to try and explain that. It's actually... And by the way, I'm not discounting your theory. I think it's probably very close to accurate, but I think that Tom might be onto something with the meteor too, because I guess I would say it like this. What was he trying to convey, and to who? Because his average audience would not have understood. Remember, there was no flight. There was no, even most astronomical phenomenon was not clearly understood at that time. So whatever the words that he used to tell his story would not have been clearly understood by the audience. So it's just sort of a curious take on it.
Well, you know what? Interesting enough, like Tom says about they'd see something in space or whatever. In Ephesus, I think it was Ephesus. I might be wrong, but there was like a meteor or whatever, and they thought that was from I don't know, I can't remember if it was Diana, who the goddess was that they worshipped. At that point, it was just a meteor that landed, right?
Yeah.
But we also have to take into consideration too: are we doing the same thing with these? As we're saying that they did with gods, are we doing this with aliens? Are we looking at the past and going, well, this has to be aliens, the same way as they looked at what they saw and said, this has to be gods?
That's a pretty good take. That's a pretty good
100%. Yeah, 100%.
And I think it's great to have, I love a good mystery, and I like to hear that's why I think it's valuable to have these different perspectives. Okay, so we're almost wrapped up on our topics for the ancient astronauts. But before we wrap up, man, I want to hear real quick about some of the things that you guys are making. JD, I got to tell you, I've always loved the titles of your books. I'm still angry that you often have better titles than I do. So tell us a little bit about When Tender Souls Mourn.
So When Tender Souls Mourn is the story of Oswald finding a young Elphys close to his home. she's being chased and she's cursed. And he takes pity on her and he brings her into his home. And he finds out that even though he's a burgeoning sorcerer, that there's some things even he can't, affect. There's certain things that even he can't solve. There's some questions even he has no answers for, right? And in this story, he finds a number of things. He discovers a number of things about himself and about his character, and and it winds up in the hands of his friends to have to resolve this story for him. So yeah. So this is issues 1 through 4, and that's all 4 issues is one story. So there you go.
Nice.
And it's illustrated by Aurelio Tillis. So looks really nice.
JD, I wish you every success with that project.
Thank you.
How about you, C? You got anything you want to promote? Tell you what, we'll go around and tell the viewers where we can find you, or anything that you might like to promote.
All right, as well as as usual, you can check me out at landingart.com. All that there. Artstyle Kamikaze is coming back in January, so look for that. I think we're going to move it over to Tuesday nights, and that's about it right now.
Perfect. Thanks for coming on the show, C.
Of course, always.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate your take. JD, other than your Kickstarter, where can we find you?
Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, DeviantArt, all those different places, but mostly on theoswaldchronicles.com, talltalesonline.com. And Sunday nights, sometimes with Tim, sometimes with C, sometimes with Tom. Todd, if you ever want to come on, we have a show. We discuss independent comics and the how we can hopefully change things for the better in independent comics. As a matter of fact, this Sunday I will be on with Marvin Wynn, and we will be interviewing a retailer and discussing independent comics with him.
Nice. I appreciate what you're doing there, JD.
We're trying.
Todd, how about you? First off, man, thanks once again for coming on the show. I really appreciate having you. And tell the viewers where we can find your work.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. This is awesome. I really appreciate you gathering all these different perspectives and all these entertaining minds together and bringing us all together. It's a lot of fun. Go to sabaton.net and you can grab their latest issue of Camouflage. If it's not already printed, it is being printed as we speak. They'll ship it to you. It comes from Sweden, and no cost, man. And they ship it to you in this really cool, Tyvek bag that says Sabaton. I even kept the bag. It's like, that's really bitchin'. I want something like that. But I got that. It's super high quality. Thanks.
It is.
But yeah, I letter their comics, and I will be designing some tour merch for them as well in the future. So
nice.
I'll be posting that.
Yeah. If you ever want any help promoting that, shout out. I'm a huge Sabaton fan. I'm not just saying.
Thank you for your support. I really appreciate you and David.
Glad to, brother. Much appreciation. Tom, always a pleasure to see you. Getting to be my new podcast buddy. Tell the viewers where we can find your work.
BigDogInk.com. If you don't know anything about Big Dog Ink, now's the time. Next year is our 15-year anniversary. We get started in January. So if you don't know who we are, trade paperbacks abound, single issues, collector's stuff. If you like the variants, everything BigDogInk.com. We're on social media everywhere. You can find me. You can find the company. Follow us up. And like I said at the beginning, I haven't yet gotten published in the sci-fi UFO genre, but next year, issue 1 is already finished. Art is already done for Dren Publications for a book called Plan 39 from Outer Space. So that'll be coming next year.
Wow. Congratulations.
There you go.
That definitely sounds like the kind of thing that I would like.
Super fun. Super fun.
So I would just like to thank my guest tonight, man. This was a fun one. I knew it was going to be a good one. I love controversial elements of UFO culture. So thank you for giving us a little bit of your time tonight. And thanks to the viewers for watching. If you'd like to follow me, I'm over on Substack. I'm Timothy B. Fling. And of course, I'm writing the Watch the Skies column. So if you'd like to see more, please feel free to come over and follow us and check that out. Until next week, watch the skies.